gammal jobba. Is that correct? Yes? Good, good. Thank you. So this is my first visit to Georgia. Yeah, me and our colleague Ladi have been talking about Georgia for 2 years, and yeah, it was great to finally be back here. And we have a lot of really interesting topics that James and I will cover here during the coming 1 hour and 57 minutes. So I hope that you will be a bit inspired and learn a thing or two. And I think what we really want to achieve with the presentation, except for the inspiration part, is to also give you some tools and some practical things that you can use basically when you come back to the office tomorrow or on Monday. So yeah, everybody have been asking me that I met, do you like Georgia? What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And I must say, so far, this is how I feel about Georgia. Great people and great food, and we also had some really interesting conversations already yesterday with some organizations here that I very much enjoyed. But I would say there's one thing. This is a photo of me before I actually came to Georgia 36 hours ago. And then I took a new photo this morning, and this is what I looked like. So I would definitely say that the food is really delicious here. So quickly about Universum, and maybe also just quickly about me then. So I'm the global COO of Universum. And I've been with Universum for over 9 years, and prior to that I ran my own company for 6 years, actually a competitor of Universum, so they acquired our company in 2007. So I actually spent the past 15 years, believe it or not, working with employer branding, research and strategy around the world. I've lived in the US for a couple of years, spent a lot of time in Asia as well, and I would say my biggest passion within the field is definitely the employer value proposition, and that's something that we will be talking a lot about in today's presentation. So I guess it's mandatory to show slides, boring slides like this in the beginning of presentation, like about the company, etc. I will keep it very short and concise. So basically, Universum, what do? We only work with employer branding. So when we wake up in the morning, we think about employer branding. When we go to sleep at night, we think about employer branding. We've been doing this for 27 years. And basically what we do is that we survey a lot of talents all around the world. And we understand where they want to work, why they want to work with those employers, what drives them, etc. And then we basically use that data to help companies to refine their strategies when communicating to the target group. Then we, of course, also help companies to actually also activate that towards the talent. So we survey, 1.4 million globally. We're very proud with some of our great partnerships that we have with CNN Money, INSEAD, Harvard Business Review. Something that we're starting to do more and more as well is to not only survey students, which is we traditionally have done it at Universum, so we're expanding more and more in the professional space. So this is basically, our strategic approach to employer branding and how we preach that companies should work with their employer branding strategies. We will get back to this a bit later in the presentation as well. But it's extremely important to always start with the organizational objectives. What do we want to achieve? Where are we going within the coming 5 or 10 years? Which are our critical talent groups that we need in order to achieve our business results? And it might be surprising, but a lot of companies actually don't think about that. They just start maybe here, looking a bit like internally, who are we? And then they spend a lot of money just starting communicating that. So it's also very important to also then understand from an external perspective what drives the talent, how they're viewing you and your competitors. Then developing your unique selling points, or what we like to refer to as employer value proposition. Developing a communication plan, choosing the right channels to be visible in, and understand how to articulate your messaging in the channels. Then activating, and then of course measuring and revising. What gets measured gets done. So that's basically how we preach that one should work with employer branding and how we work with our best clients, basically. Does it make sense? Yeah. Good. So I will now start with some global trends, and I'll start with this one. Has anyone seen this before? Yes? Okay. Good. I'll read it quickly. Men wanted for hazardous journeys, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return, doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. So this is actually a client in South Africa that showed this slide, I think 3 years ago or something like that, and I took the liberty of stealing it from him because I think it was such a good way to start a presentation. And what this basically is, this is, oh, now you can't see the heading, but it says employer branding in 1913. So this is basically, how you promoted the job and yourself as an employer 100 years ago. And fun fact, does anybody know how many that showed up based on this ad? It was in a newspaper in London. Does anyone dare to guess? None? Completely wrong. Sorry? 5,800 people showed up. And apparently 4 women as well, despite the very clear heading here. So, of course, a lot has changed since then, but I still think that we have a lot to learn. And I will actually show you this brilliant video. So, does anyone want to guess why I show this video? So, this is, I would say, what most companies do. They basically talk about everything at the same time. They don't think about differentiation. They are very generic. And I've showed this video to many companies, and actually several companies have said, oops, we've actually used this footage ourselves in our ads. So I would say that I'm not happy yet with where we are in terms of employer branding, even amongst the world's biggest and most successful companies. And I will actually later on share with you some best practices, but also some worst practices when it comes to promoting one's employer brand that are quite amusing as well. So here's a slide that I like. This basically shows the change when it comes to the value creation. This is from the US. You can't see it here due to projector, but this is basically back in 1982, 60% of the corporate value came from tangible assets. In 2010, that changed to 15%. So what does that mean? That basically means that this, like brain power, has become a lot more important for the companies, and also that your and my job also get a lot more fun. Then globally, we're hearing a lot about, things getting tougher and tougher, the competition for every year. And yes, it's actually true. And I will share with you some data points actually proving this as well. So here you can see, this is from the Manpower Talent Shortage Survey. Here you can see the percent of employers reporting hiring difficulties. You can see 2006, 2007, it was around 40%. Then, of course, we had the financial crisis. Boom, this happened. And what we're seeing now is that every year it goes up and up. So basically now we're back at almost the same levels as we were before the financial downturn. Then another thing that we're seeing is that, employer branding is becoming also higher and higher on the management agenda. And I've been doing this now for 15 years, and I can see how it has developed. Just 5 or 6 years ago, we're very seldom that we at Universum spoke to global CEOs. Now when we publish our global rankings, etc., we're having multiple calls with the global CEOs. And many CEOs also have actually our rankings as a core measurement for them. So we can also see here, this is from PwC's annual CEO survey. And here we can see the percentage of CEOs concerned over availability of key skills and talent. And here you can also see, once again, a very clear trend. So 73% of the CEOs are actually worried about this. And it's very, very, very clear trend that follows the trend on the previous slide. So it's more and more on the CEO agenda. And which target group do you think that the CEOs are most worried about? Sorry, just gonna get my water. What type of talent? Does anybody dare to guess?
Management level, I think.
Management level? Experts. Yeah. Digital talent and engineering talent. So it's really interesting to see, you know, how that has changed. We can see many of the banks have shifted completely in terms of how they recruit. I worked when I lived in the US with many of the big iBank, the investment banks, and most of them didn't spend anything when it came to research and strategy on the business students and professionals. They only focused on engineering and IT. And then one other data point that supports the new world that I'm presenting here with, you know, even tougher competition for talent is this. So this is something that actually from Universum's research. So in our surveys, we basically have a list of employers. On global average, that list consists of 130 employers. It varies a bit per market. But then we ask the talents, which of these employers would you consider working for? They can pick as many as applicable out of 130. How many do you guess that they pick? They have 130 employers in front of them. They can pick as many as they want. How many do you think that they consider working for? Saying like, yeah, I would consider working there. 10, 5, 20. Did I hear 25? 1, 3, 3. Okay, good. A good spread here. If we would have been here standing talking back in 2008, the right response would have been 12. They picked 12. Now, when we look at the data, we can actually see that that number is 20. Yeah. So what we can see is that it's actually doubled since 2008. And what does that mean? That means that the talents has a lot wider consideration set when they pick their employers. In the past, what we've seen is that a student has said that, yep, I'm studying finance, I could consider working for these 5 banks, and that's it. And that we don't see anymore. We see that they have a much wider set of employers that they're considering working for, not tied to industry. So you don't choose an industry anymore. You choose employers. And you choose those employers from a much more, I would say, emotional level. Okay? Then, also some global trends that we've seen, how the world has changed. So these are things that I think all of you recognize. And here's how it has changed. So we can see that people have gone from, you know, thinking about work to actually considering their job being part of their life and who they are. They, don't like, you know, just having goals and saying like, oh, we need to get, you know, 20 applicants here, or we need to hit this sales number this quarter. They want to understand what is the purpose of this, what is the overall purpose. They don't want managers, they want moderators. They don't want instructions. They want to be steered by values and the culture. Yeah, going from dogma to curiosity. Avoid mistakes to generate insights. Some of you might have heard from Facebook. I mean, their motto is move fast and break things, basically. Try things out. And I also think that if it is Facebook or if it is Google, I don't remember actually, but that they also have like to celebrate the failure of the month as well. Like, oh, this is something that we really screwed up. This is what we did. Look at this. And here are the learnings, so we don't do it again. Going from national to global diversity, from hierarchy to meritocracy, departments to networks. So this is, already today, and sometimes when we presented this, especially I would say on a management level for many companies, we have, some people who might have been there with the company for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, and sitting there like, no, this is not, I don't agree with this. And I mean, this is not something you have to agree with. This is just, fact. This is how, the world has changed. And either you adapt to that or you don't. Another interesting thing that we're also seeing is the, how things are developing when it comes to how companies view talent. And this is an area that I'm very passionate about, and I think that we will talk a lot more about in the future. So traditionally, it's been very clear that, oh, we recruit from these 5 schools and we only recruit people with, this grade, and if they have that grade and gone to that school, they fit in with our company. Great, we're going to hire them. But what we can see is that, there's, more and more of a, lack of satisfaction from the companies in terms of the quality from the university, and also that the younger audience actually is starting to question, do I really need to study at the university? Is it worth taking all of these student loans? So just an interesting number. So 72% of the universities feel that their students are well equipped for the professional life. When we ask the companies the same question, do you think that it's higher or lower? Lower. Yes, so it's 42% of the employers feel the same thing. And that's also why we're seeing corporate universities and so forth is booming as well. And I think that we will continue to see that as well. And then we did a really interesting survey among Gen Z, and that's basically the next generation that will enter the workforce after the millennials. And what we then could see is that actually 59% of them are actually interested in finding out more about how companies offer education to people who have no university degree. So we can see that they are, very much starting to question this as well. And of course, this is also connected to, the startup scene as well. People see, people like, Mark Zuckerberg, they see, SpaceX, etc., and, a lot of other smaller companies as well, people being successful, and that's what, captures their attention. So we can see among the students, it's 9% that would say that they want to, start their own company. But once again, when we look at the younger generation, it's actually 41% who say they want to start their own company. So this is also very, very important to keep in mind. And I mean, I had a meeting with one of the world's biggest iBanks in Paris a couple of months ago, and we sat there and talked about, okay, your competitors, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, KJ, like, we're not competing with any of the other banks. We're not losing any talents to the other banks. We're just losing them to, the startups. So it's already happening. So this was some global trends. Was it helpful? Yeah. Good, good. So I'm going to ask a question. How many has a clear employer value proposition? Most of you? No? No one? Good. So then I would say that you're on par with Czech Republic, because I asked the same question when I was there a couple of months ago, and also nobody raised their hand. So then it's really good that I'm here today and that we're going to be spending some time talking about this topic. And once again, just to remind you, this is where we now are going to be talking about. And then when James is going to take over the microphone, he will talk more about this piece here. So what is then the difference between an employer value proposition and an employer brand? Does anybody want to provide the answer to the rest of the group?
After your presentation.
Okay, after my presentation. Good. Ah, good.
Maybe EVP is what you have and employee brand is how you communicate it and give it as an information to the interested persons.
So EVP is what you have, and the employer brand is how
you sell it.
how you sell it. I'll give you my take, okay? But, so, and I can say this, in the middle of the night, if you wake me up, KJ, can you say this? Yes, I can. So, every company has an employer brand, whether they like it or not, or whether they are working with it actively or not. The employer brand is always in the eye of the beholder. The employer brand does not necessarily need to reflect the true reality at the employer. The employer value proposition, that is the tool that you use in order to influence your employer brand in a desired direction. So you're fully in control of your employer value proposition, but only partly in control of your employer brand. Does that make sense? So to simplify it, the employer brand, it's always out there. That's how you're perceived as an employer. There's no, I mean, sometimes speak to companies saying like, yeah, but we don't have an employer brand. Well, you do, because people who have seen your logo or know somebody who works at your company, they have a perception of what it's like to work there. It might be completely off, but it's out there. And the best way to then take control of this employer brand is then to have an employer value proposition. And I will explain to you kind of the building blocks behind the employer value proposition. Then, of course, there are other aspects that, of course, also influence the employer brand. If you have a very strong consumer brand, for example, that also, of course, affects how they view you as an employer. So, I mean, for just an example, L'Oreal, for example, they automatically get a lot of associations with, you know, Paris, you know, long hair, slow motion, and stuff like that. And that's then, you know, luggage that they have to carry when it comes to their employer branding strategy. So many times, and you know, I would say a more unknown B2B company, they have, in my opinion, a bit more freedom, to be completely honest, when it comes to crafting an employer value proposition. It's extremely important that the employer value proposition is not only built from the inside. And I sometimes get, you know, the question, like, what is the most common mistake that you see companies doing? And I will say that there are two common mistakes. One is, yeah, basing this strategy and this employer value proposition only from the inside. Because the danger when you do that is that you look internal and you say, like, oh, we're so proud of that, and we're so proud of that, and, oh, we're so great at this. Our CEO thinks this is super important. Good. Now we go out and communicate this. And then you spend a lot of money and a lot of time talking about all of these things that you're super proud of. But you have no idea which of those things that actually are attractive to the target group. You don't know which of these things that are credible for you to be talking about. You don't know which of these things that are differentiating from your competitors. So by just looking internally, you will definitely not, I'm not going to say that you will fail, but you will definitely not maximize your employer branding spend. The other common mistake that companies are doing, that's obviously not doing anything at all with the employer value proposition. Because that's unfortunately something that we also see, that we work with a company, they pay us a lot of money, and we develop an employer value proposition, and then they don't do anything with it. And that's, of course, very frustrating as well. That's, of course, something that we also try to assist companies not doing. And then another important thing with the employer value proposition is that you have to understand that it takes time to develop something like this. It does not take 3 years, but it takes, you know, a lot of resources. It takes a couple of months to develop something like this. You don't just, you know, have a workshop and come up with it. And I will describe to you in detail our, I would say, scientific approach to the employer value proposition. Also, something that a lot of companies are saying is that when I ask them, what is your employer value proposition? Then they say, oh, okay, Jay, it's we care about people, or challenges first. I'm like, okay, those are slogans, but what's actually the value proposition? No, but yeah, we really care about the people, and people is important, and it's like the center. Okay, but what is the employer value proposition? So in my world, the employer value proposition, those are the tangible things that you use to then create slogans and so forth. So I will describe it a bit later, but the employer value proposition in my world is a toolbox that you use. These are things that are attractive, true, credible, distinct, sustainable for us as an organization. These are the things that we should focus on to this target group, to this target group, to this target group. So it's a very tactical thing. Here you can see the 3 steps when it comes to developing an employer value proposition. You always have to start here with understanding. And this is heavily rooted in research, of course, both internal and external, like I pointed out earlier. Then it's extremely important to also include management. One, because they are, of course, fundamental when it comes to the sustainable piece, the long-term aspect, the aspirational aspect of the employer value proposition. But can anybody come up with another reason why it's important to involve management? Okay, I will say it, at least according to me, that including management will also make it a lot easier for you to then sell the employer value proposition internally, because it's really important that management also feel that they've been part of crafting it. It's very dangerous just to develop the employer value proposition excluding management and then coming to them and saying like, oh, here's something that we developed here. Then they would be like, oh, no, I don't know anything about that. Like, you have to start from scratch. So that's also why it's super important. Then some smart people might say, well, KJ, I mean, if you're going to develop an employer value proposition, it needs to be like 100% credible. It needs to be 100% true. Can we then, and we're going to change, our business completely over the coming 5 or 10 years. So we need to recruit a completely different type of people. Well, no, it doesn't need to be 100% true or 100% credible. You choose how aspirational you want the employer value proposition to be. You can choose a low-hanging fruit employer value proposition with things that fulfill all of these 5 things. Or you can go for something that's very aspirational. If you go for a very aspirational employer value proposition, that will take longer time for you to be successful, and it will also cost you more money because you need to change the perception more than if you go for a low-hanging fruit one. So I will give you an example, because we at Universum, when we developed our employer value proposition, we followed exactly this same process. And when I did the workshop, and this was, let's see, 4 years ago, our CEO, my boss, Peter, said, well, KJ, I want innovation to be in the EVP. And then I said to him, well, Peter, honestly, we are not innovative. We're not seen as innovative by externally nor internally. We're seen as a research company who deliver PDF reports, and we have some, print publications in some different countries. So we're not seen as that innovative. He said, I don't care, I want innovation to be in the EVP. Then I said to him, well, then that needs to be an aspirational aspect of the EVP. And this will take time for us, and you will also have to invest a lot of money if you want this to actually happen. He said, yes. So what we did at Universum then was that we changed our logo type. We painted all of our offices orange. I think some people would definitely say that it's a bit too orange. And we've also grown our digital activation revenue with like 180 to 100% every year. We now have a system where our clients can log in and play around with the data, etc. So are we seen as an innovative company now? Yes, but it's taken 4 years and costed us a lot of money to get there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Good. So, yeah, I'll come back to this a bit later, but this is, basically when we at Universum develop an employer value proposition, kind of the heart of our entire analysis is based on this. And this is a framework that we developed. Actually, it was my first job at Universum to be part of developing this 9 years ago. So we developed it together with an HR professor. She's now at Northeastern in the US, Paula Di Caligura. And we updated it twice, once in 2012 and once in 2016, actually. Changed a couple of attributes. And by using all of these attributes, we are then able to do a very, I would say, scientific analysis. And I will show you with some circles a bit later how we go about doing that. But this is basically then what you do. So you do all of this research in the understand phase, and then you basically put this research through these 5 filters. Is it true? Is it sustainable? Is it attractive? Is it credible? Is it distinct? And then what you end up with is possible content for the EVP. Some things are low-hanging fruit, some things are more aspirational. The aspirational ones, like I said earlier, will cost you more money. There are more consequences to choosing those, but there is no right or wrong here. But it's really important that you make that decision. How aspirational do we want to be? And then when you do that, normally how companies do is that they then have a workshop. In this workshop, you look at this content and you together, marketing, HR, management, perhaps some key employees as well, decide based on this short list of attributes, yes, this is what we are going to include in our employee value proposition. And then, of course, and James will talk a lot more about that as well, it's all about finding proof points and stories, reasons to believe behind this. And then summarizing this into something comprehensive that you can use in the organization. We like to refer to as an Evp Guidebook, where you have, here are the themes, this is what the themes mean, this is how the theme is to be articulated to different target groups, etc., etc. So this is what it could look like. Okay, here are 4 pillars for the EVP. Doesn't say that much, right? Okay, here's then a description of what this theme actually means for this company. Then it's a description on, okay, how they are to, focus this theme globally versus locally, how they are to articulate the EVP to different target groups, and how it sets them apart. So this is one example. Here's another example from an EVP. This is from a German company, so that's why it's a bit complicated. So here they wanted us to develop, okay, this is the EVP today, and this is the EVP tomorrow, talking about the aspirational part. So I think that this actually is quite an interesting. We normally don't do it this way, but I think it's a pretty interesting approach. Here's another example. This is the EVP for one of the world's largest companies. And here what I like with this one, and that's also a direction that we are moving towards more and more, is that this is focused around openness and curiosity. So that's the main thing from the EVP, and then the other things are building blocks around that. Because, yeah, we saw 4 themes there earlier. I think what we're seeing now is that we're trying to, minimize the content of the EVP. Because like I showed you earlier, the competition is fiercer than ever. You're not only competing with 12 companies now, you're competing with 20 other organizations. You need to be really, really clear in your communication to be successful. So I like, when I challenge companies, I say that you have to think about what word that you want to own. Which word do you want to own? So if you wake somebody up in the middle of the night and you say, Google, they say like, innovation. Wake them up again. You say GE, they say leadership. Wake them up in the middle of the night, and they say your company's name. What is that word that you want them to say? I think that that's a really important starting point to think about.